Her eyes stayed on the screen as I spoke. I had only asked if she was still coming to my client's dinner, the one she had promised to attend a week ago. She sighed quietly, then set her phone down with deliberate care. "You are too sensitive." It was not said with malice. That would have made it easier. It was said like a diagnosis, calm, sterile, as if my discomfort were a flaw to be corrected. I leaned back in my chair, steadying my breath. "I'm just asking why you changed your mind." She reached for her glass and took a slow sip of water. "Because it was not that important, and you always take things too personally." There was no apology, just the flick of her hand as she returned to her phone, thumb moving with casual detachment. I said nothing more. There was no value in arguing with someone who had already decided your feelings were a weakness. She had used that line 3 times in as many weeks. Once when I questioned why she had been out past midnight without explanation. Once when I asked about a charge from a wine bar she claimed she had never visited. And now, for simply expecting her to show up to something she agreed to. I let the rest of the evening unfold in practiced silence. We shared a meal that had gone cold before it reached the table. She talked about her new wellness client, a woman in finance who was so lost she did not even know how to meditate. I nodded in the right places, smiled once when she laughed. I did not ask who she had been texting during dinner. I already knew I would not believe the answer. That night she climbed into bed and reached for her phone before turning off the lamp. She faced the wall. Her back looked smaller than it used to, or maybe it was my own distance that made it feel that way. I lay there still, eyes open. There was no confrontation, no accusation, but the silence between us had shifted. It was no longer absence. It was erosion. I told myself I was being paranoid. But I remembered something my father once said to me when I was a teenager, just after my mother left. "If something feels off, it is. Do not wait for proof that comes too late." The next morning I acted normal. I brewed her favorite coffee, left it by the sink, and drove to work early. She texted me 2 hours later with a smile emoji and a quick thanks. By lunch, I had logged into our shared account. The wine bar charge was still there, listed under a card I thought she rarely used. I opened the full statement. A charge from a boutique hotel appeared 2 days earlier. She had told me she was at a day retreat. The billing time was 9:42 p.m. I stared at the screen not because I was shocked, but because I realized how calmly I was reacting. Suspicion had passed. Now I was documenting. That evening she greeted me at the door, hair damp from a shower, robe tied a little too carefully. She kissed me on the cheek and asked how my day had been. I said it was good. I asked about her session. She smiled. "Transformative, I feel lighter." I asked if she had taken any photos. She hesitated, then laughed. "You do not want to see me covered in clay." I told her I did. She waved it off and changed the subject. I watched her as she dried her hair. She hummed an old song. She looked the same. But the woman standing in front of me was playing a role she no longer believed in. And I would not confront her yet. I would watch. I would gather. Because if I was right, if this was more than emotional distance, then what came next would require precision, not emotion. I intended to remove the lie without warning. 2 days later, I noticed the scarf. It was draped across the back of her chair, the one she always kept perfectly arranged, except this time, it was not in its usual color rotation. Deep navy with a pattern I had never seen her wear. I lifted it briefly, and the scent that rose from it did not belong in this house. Cedar and bergamot, subtle, male, unfamiliar. When she walked into the room, her expression shifted just enough for me to register it. "That new?" I asked, folding the scarf and setting it neatly on the chair. Her smile was a second too late. "A gift from a client, left it in the car for weeks." I nodded, returning to my laptop without another word. She lingered a moment longer than usual, then moved on. That night she was affectionate, uncharacteristically so. Sat beside me on the couch, legs tucked under her, her head resting on my shoulder. "I know I have been a little off," she said, her voice low. I turned toward her but kept my expression still. "What do you mean?" She shifted. "Work has been exhausting, everything feels stretched." "Is that all it is?" She kissed my cheek slowly. "Of course, why are you worried?" I let out a quiet breath, just trying to understand. She touched my arm with practiced warmth. "Do not spiral, you are just tired." The word choice hit like a blade. I remembered what she said days ago, too sensitive. Now tired. Next would be unstable or insecure, This was not apology, it was calibration. I checked the synced devices that night. An old iPad barely used still linked to her account. I had forgotten it existed. She had too. A notification blinked mid-scroll, her email. A message labeled bank change confirmation with a timestamp from last week. I opened it. She had created a new account. Not at our usual bank. A new institution entirely. The form included her business entity, the one we had formed together 2 years ago for a joint wellness brand. The signature line bore my name, in my handwriting, but I had never signed it. I stared at the screen as a familiar calm settled over me. She had not only lied, she had crossed into deliberate financial deception. I screen captured the email, saved it to an encrypted drive. Then I traced the account number. A few digital loops later, I confirmed the worst: steady transfers. Not large, not reckless, but systematic, over 9 months. Every dollar peeled away from our business had been hidden under the umbrella of operational expenses. The timing aligned with the change in her behavior. Every emotional withdrawal had a ledger entry. The next day, I made a quiet phone call to an old friend, a former forensic accountant now working privately. I told him what I had. He did not sound surprised. "I can trace everything," he said. "Give me access, I will tell you where it started and where it ends." That evening she told me she had a new retreat coming up. A last-minute intensive, 2 nights at a spa hotel. I nodded. "That sounds perfect for you," she blinked. "You are not upset." "Why would I be?" She tilted her head slightly, reading me. "You seem different." "I am listening more, watching." She smiled as if I had complimented her. When she left, I stood in the doorway and watched her drive off. She did not look back. I walked inside and opened my laptop. I was done feeling paranoid. Now I was building my case transaction by transaction, smile by smile. She thought the erosion had gone unnoticed. She was wrong. The report arrived in pieces over 5 days. Each file contained what I already suspected: transfers camouflaged as reimbursements, withdrawals masked by vague memos, deposits into a shell company that did not operate. My name had been used 6 times. Each time the signature varied just enough to escape notice, but too similar to ignore once you knew what to look for. I spent hours with those files, not out of confusion but to absorb the scale of her architecture. This was not impulse. It was strategy. The amounts were modest on the surface, but over time they painted a different picture, a slow siphoning of security, planned beneath the surface of our marriage. I watched the video clip next. Sent from the investigator, grainy but clear. A parking garage, her stepping into a black Audi. The man who opened the door was not a stranger, Noah Harrington, our financial advisor. I felt no sudden rage, only confirmation. Months ago, he had praised our communication, commended us for our balance. He smiled at her too long when she laughed. I had noticed, but I had chalked it up to the small flirtations people allow when they believe they are safe. The footage showed them driving off together. 2 days later, another clip. Her entering a hotel lobby alone. Him following 3 minutes later. No touch, no eye contact, just precision. The timestamp matched a night she had claimed to be at a networking mixer. She returned home that night smelling faintly of champagne. She had kissed me at the door, told me I would have hated the venue. Too loud, she was good at this. That evening I printed everything: bank statements, unauthorized signature approvals, location logs, photos, video stills. I placed them in a manila folder and stored it inside the back of a filing drawer labeled insurance. I said nothing for another full week. She brought home groceries, cooked dinner, laughed more than usual. She even suggested we plan a getaway, just the two of us. Her idea, I agreed. "Really?" she asked, setting down her wine glass. "You are not going to pretend you are too busy?" I looked at her over the rim of my glass. "No, I think we need this." She touched my hand gently. "That is the man I miss." I smiled. That night I booked the resort. Oceanfront, isolated, a place we had once talked about but never visited. She texted me the next morning with hearts and gratitude. She believed this was reconciliation. But I needed one last moment of intimacy, not with her body, but with her illusion. I needed to stand across from the person who had rewritten my life without permission, and know that I had found every missing word. When we arrived, she turned in a slow circle on the balcony and said, "This was the right move. I feel like myself again." She poured wine, took off her shoes, opened the door to the sea breeze, and I sat across from her, nodding, holding the weight of every quiet discovery in my chest. The confrontation would not come tonight. Tomorrow I would show her what I knew. But tonight I would let her believe, because the last lie she would tell herself was that she was still in control. The next morning she woke before I did. I heard the shower run, the soft thump of her suitcase opening, zippers rasping in rhythm. When I stepped onto the balcony with my coffee, she was already dressed in the wrap I had bought her for our anniversary. She turned and smiled like we were something whole. "Slept well," I sipped, nodded once. "Peacefully." We ate breakfast at the small cafe beside the resort's garden. She ordered French toast. I had nothing but coffee. She rested her hand on mine halfway through the meal. "I like this version of us, present, uncomplicated." I met her gaze and said nothing. After we returned to the room, she opened the sliding door and stood at the railing again, staring at the sea. I reached into my bag and removed the folder. I laid it on the bed. No words. She turned when she heard the soft click of the metal clasp. She looked at the folder, then at me. "What is that?" I sat. My voice stayed level. "Documentation." She moved slowly, picked it up, opened the top flap. Her eyes scanned the first page, the forged signature. She flipped to the second, a photo still of her and Noah entering the garage. Then a receipt in her name, billed to the boutique hotel. Each page added weight to her hands. Her mouth parted slightly, but no sound came. I stayed seated, still, calm. She finally spoke. "You have been tracking me. You have been quietly unraveling my life." She set the folder down carefully, as if it might combust. "You do not understand. I understand exactly. I know about the new account, the fake business expenses, the way you rerouted funds through his firm." Her face paled. "That was not—" "Do not finish that sentence unless you are ready for cross-examination." The edge in my voice surprised even me. She tried again, quieter. "I thought I was doing it gradually enough. I thought you were too focused on work to see it." I nodded slowly. "That was your first mistake." Tears welled, but she blinked them away fast, too fast. Reflex, not remorse. She took a step forward. "We can talk about this. There is still something between us. There has to be, or you would not have brought me here." I stood, met her at the center of the room. "I brought you here to give you the truth in private. You do not deserve spectacle, but you deserve clarity." She shook her head, tears now falling. "Please, you are not thinking clearly." I stepped back. "On the contrary. I have never seen anything more clearly than I see you now." She sank to the edge of the bed, folder in her lap. I picked up my bag. "The accounts have already been frozen. My lawyer filed this morning. You will be served officially in 48 hours. Her voice cracked. "You are going to ruin everything for me." "No, I am going to stop you from finishing what you started." As I walked out, she whispered something I did not catch. I did not stop to ask her to repeat. Outside, the air hit me like absolution. This was not rage, it was reclamation. She had tried to make me doubt myself, my instincts, my strength, but she forgot the man she called sensitive was the one who could see straight through her silence. And I had finally stopped pretending I could not. I returned home before noon. The silence felt different now. Not the void she left behind, it was the presence of certainty. There was no illusion left to maintain. The performance was over. The script had closed. I opened the safe in my study and transferred the originals of every document into a sealed envelope marked for my attorney. Then I placed a single sheet atop the pile, a signed affidavit from the forensic accountant, confirming the misappropriation of business assets and the imitation of my signature without consent. That evening, her name disappeared from every account we had once shared. The next morning, I received the first call from our financial institution. Her attempted access had triggered a security flag. They asked if I wanted to be notified of future login attempts. I declined. I already knew she would try again, but not through the front door. By the third day, messages started arriving. The first was a long one, emotional, unpunctuated, erratic. She accused me of betrayal, of cruelty, of planning her downfall. She said I had used my sensitivity as a tool against me. I read the entire message, then deleted. The second message was more composed. She framed her actions as panic. Said Noah had convinced her to hide the transfers as a safety net in case the business failed. She never intended to use my name. It was a mistake. I read it twice, not to consider her defense, but to study her language. There was no apology, only self-preservation. By the end of the week, she called my lawyer directly. She requested mediation. She wanted to resolve this misunderstanding quietly. My lawyer's assistant called me after the conversation. She is starting to sense the walls closing, she said. Her voice cracked when I mentioned the forensic report. I asked if she still had representation. She says her attorney dropped her after the details came out. I nodded. That sounds right. That weekend, I met with a small circle of mutual friends, people who had been cautiously silent since the separation became public. One by one, they asked me the same question. How much of it was true? I told them the minimum. That there had been financial misconduct, that she had manipulated joint resources, that legal action had been required. I did not mention the affair. I did not need to. By the next day, her social media accounts were deactivated. A friend texted me later that evening. She tried to say you were emotionally unreliable. Now nobody believes a word out of her mouth. I did not reply. The fallout had begun in earnest. Her retreat from our shared circles was not graceful. She had underestimated how quickly lies decay once exposed to light. Noah's firm was under audit. A quiet investigation had been opened into his handling of multiple accounts. I had not been the only one affected, but I might have been the first to act. By the second week, she stopped reaching out. No more messages, no more explanations, only silence. It felt like relief, not triumph, not revenge. Just the slow exhale of something toxic finally leaving my life. And for the first time in over a year, I felt like my life belonged to me again. I changed the locks on a Tuesday, not out of fear, out of finality. She had not returned since the weekend at the resort. But I knew how ghosts work. They do not knock before they revisit what they believe still belongs to them. The locksmith asked no questions. Quick, professional, clean. As the last bolt clicked into place, I stood in the entryway and realized how unfamiliar the house had become. Not because she had left, but because I had stopped pretending she had ever been fully here. I moved through each room with quiet purpose. Her items were already boxed, not donated, not destroyed, just stored. I could not bring myself to throw them away, not yet. Not because I still wanted her, but because some griefs demand their own slow burial. That night I sat in the living room alone, no lights, no noise. I stared at the space where our anniversary photo had once hung. The small hole from the nail remained. I would patch it later. For now, I wanted the mark to stay. It reminded me that something had been removed. The next morning, I cleared the guest room and turned it into an office. Not a project of reinvention, just space for forward motion. I brought in books that had been tucked away during our redesigns. I placed them back where they belonged. Some objects still made me pause. The small ceramic bowl she used to place her rings in. The old note she had left in my suitcase once on a business trip, come back whole. I left it in the drawer unopened. Later that week, I ran into someone we both knew, a neighbor we had spoken to in passing for years. She looked hesitant before speaking. I heard what happened, she said. I am sorry. I gave a brief nod. Thank you. She told people you were. Difficult, the woman added, voice lowering. I did not respond. After a moment, she looked away. I did not believe her, just so you know. I nodded again, slower this time. That matters. The conversation ended there. In the days that followed, silence became my rhythm. No one to explain myself to, no questions to dodge, no apologies to parse for sincerity, just space. Still, some habits remained. I would catch myself waiting for a message that would not come. I would reach for 2 mugs in the morning before correcting my hand, but every correction was a small reclaiming. Of time, of space, of self. I did not check on her. I had no interest in what became of Noah or whether she had found new footing. That was no longer my concern. She had spent 9 months hollowing out the foundation of our life, and I had survived by not trying to rebuild the same structure. I was building something else now, not a fortress. Just a place with doors that only opened from the inside. The final court date came on a gray morning in early spring. I wore the same suit I had worn to our last anniversary dinner. The irony was not lost on me. She did not look at me when I entered the room. Her shoulders were hunched, her hands folded too tightly in her lap. She looked smaller than I remembered. The hearing lasted less than 20 minutes. No objections. No speeches. The judge signed the dissolution and made it official. It ended not with thunder, but with a single, decisive stroke of a pen. Outside, she stood near the steps. Her eyes found mine for the first time in weeks. No anger, no plea, just something hollow. She stepped closer, stopping short of arm's reach. "This is what you wanted." Her voice was steady. Tired, I held her gaze. "This is what your choices required." She blinked slowly, absorbing that. "I did love you," she said. The way someone confesses to something after the damage is done, hoping the words will soften the shape of what they broke. "I believe you," I replied, "but you loved yourself more." She flinched barely, then nodded once. "So this is it. This was it a long time ago. We are just catching up." She looked like she wanted to say something else. She did not. She turned and walked away. No dramatics, no begging, just silence. And I let her go without looking back. Weeks passed. The world did not pause to mourn my losses. Bills arrived. Work resumed. Friends slowly returned to the perimeter of my life, cautious at first, then steadier. One evening I sat at a cafe I had always meant to visit but never had. I brought a book. I read the same paragraph 5 times before realizing I was not reading at all. I was thinking about what it meant to trust yourself after someone taught you to doubt every instinct, about the quiet pride of surviving without bitterness, about how peace often comes not with answers but with the refusal to ask the same questions again. A woman at the next table smiled as she stood to leave. She reminded me of no one. I nodded politely, then returned to my page. I did not want anything from her, not interest, not company, just the reminder that I could exist in a world where people do not always lie to you when they smile. At home, I opened the drawer where her final note remained. "Come back whole." She had written it for a trip she never expected me to return from unchanged. I held the paper for a moment, then I tore it in half. I had come back whole, but not the same. Better, not despite her betrayal, because I chose to end it before it rewrote who I was. She once told me I was too sensitive, and now she will live with the truth. That sensitivity is not weakness. It is what saved me.